Hey, what's up, fellas? Doing a video for Richie today. I got his name right for once. We're testing out his boiler. This is the maiden flight. We're going to be running this thing and ironing out any kinks that are observed during the process. So let's take a look at what we got here. Alright, fellas, what we're looking at here is a dual plate banjo burner adapted for liquid fuel combustion. It's not the same setup with the as the gaseous fuels like propane. This right here is a splash lock that is used to keep the boiling fervor in the tank and not splashing out of the nozzle, which happens a lot on these boiler systems. I built one for a guy a while back who owns a winery, and one of the problems we had was with water splashing out. Here's a look at the ball valve, or the float valve I should say, that I'm using. I think I got the water pressure up just a little too high. I'm going to tamper with that and lower it maybe, because I think the boiling bubbles causes a buoyancy issue. Okay, the fuel is not being preheated yet. This is just right after ignition. We're going to turn on the fuel preheat, and that definitely alters the way this thing runs. I forgot to adjust the nozzle angle of attack during this test. There's so many things going on at once that I really need to devise a checklist next time I test this thing. But the purpose of the day was to fire it up to prove that it is going to work okay and that it's worth building a control box for it. So now that we've shown that the thing does work, we're going to build a control box with electric ignition and all that stuff, and I'm going to try and get a glow plug in here so we don't have to use propane ignition assist. That's kind of an issue. So seems we got a little bit of black blast of air, so I'm going to hook this fan up to keep all the auxiliary equipment from melting, because we don't have the shroud that's going to be on this thing at the end of the day. We got all this back blast of heat. The thing does boil water quite well, and keep in mind we are only heating the bottom of this tank. So this burner is just an amazing piece of equipment. This is the power output we're looking at. About $13 an hour to run at the setting that we're looking at. You can turn it down. I just wanted to go max power to show its full potential. We could probably even go a little higher than this. I chose to stop at 500 psi's of fuel input. So that's what we're looking at right here, is about 500 psi's of diesel fuel. And if you use the off-road diesel, the high sulfur stuff or whatever it is, I believe you can bring that price down by half, if my memory serves me correct. I think that could be wrong. It's been a while, but as you can see, we're getting some amazing plumes of steam. All we got to do is fill a Connex box full of steam, and I'm pretty sure this thing's going to do just fine. Once we get that secondary shroud going around the boiler, we're going to have a significant amount of heat exchange surface area, whereas right now we're just looking at what we can do by heating the bottom of this tank, which I think the performance is phenomenal. So there's our 500 psi's of fuel input. That was 200 watts of fuel preheat. We're preheating that diesel up to 138 degrees Fahrenheit for a little bit of extra performance to get that smoke-free combustion. And this is what we got. I couldn't be happier with that splash lock. As I said, I think Eric is the guy I built one of these before for a vineyard, and I had to build a splash lock on it too, and it didn't work as well as this one. I couldn't fill the keg up as much.
Run the splash lock worked amazing. I don't know what I'm going to call this thing, but it worked out great. This section here, in the past I've had boilers that boiled so vigorously that a lot of your water got thrown out of the top end.
Alright, fellas, so the next step is to build a control box or a control panel, and we're going to shroud the bottom section of this keg only to the point where the water is going to fill up. We don't want the section where the water doesn't fill up to be exposed to the exhaust gases, because when we first start this thing up, we're not going to have any steam to protect the temperature of that container. There's the splash lock, the bottom of it anyway. And this thing filled up a little bit more than I wanted to. I think the bubbles are altering the buoyancy, and as a result I need to lower the pressure on the float valve. But anyway, Richie, that's where we're at, brother. This thing is wound for sound. I just got to get you a control panel rigged up so it's easy to fire it up and it isn't just a complete mess. I didn't want to take the time and spend the money on that until I talk to you and let you see what we got going on here. I think this thing's gonna pretty much solve our steam problems, and the residual heat coming off of this thing is going to be ducted into the Connex as well, and we ought to have ourselves one heck of an autoclave. I think this will be plenty of steam. I should have opened up my garage there and filled it up with steam for you. It'd probably do it in about 15 seconds. I wasn't thinking, man, I apologize. But anyway, this is where we are. I'm gonna tally this thing up to this point and get with you on that. Just wanted to show you some steam flying out of a pipe before we got that far, but this is pretty much gonna be the source of steam, and we're gonna take a 1-inch pipe and we're gonna route it down into the heat shroud, and we're gonna superheat that steam at low pressure. That way we don't gotta have a pressurized boiler, but yet we can still get high temperature steam. That's one of the ways you can pull that off without having to build a dangerous high pressure boiler, because steam pressure is proportional to the temperature you can get it. So, not with the superheater though. So we're gonna get around that. We're gonna build a low pressure, high temperature steam boiler using a preheat coil, so to say. About fell on my arse right there, but I still got those job site reflexes. Not all the time. I about knocked a steel staircase off a platform a couple weeks ago. Man, I got down up off the ground. I was working on a vacuum cleaner that I was carrying and about took myself out. So anyway, I'm shutting up, guys. This is where we are. We're going to see this thing again with a heat shroud around the bottom section of that keg, and we're going to have a 1-inch superheater steam line wrapping around in there too, so we'll have some 250 degree steam flying out of this thing.